Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. It's your friend Rick from Blind, and today I have for you Jack Leach, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Dexcom. So, as Chief Operating Officer, he's responsible for all things product, including day-to-day decision making and resource allocation for global operations, research and development, clinical affairs, quality management, and regulatory. Before becoming COO, he was the CTO, leading Dexcom's research, product development, project management, and engineering departments. So, for those of you that do not know, Dexcom empowers people to take control of diabetes through its continuous glucose monitoring systems. The company is a leader in diabetes care technology, which is why we're so happy to have Jake, you on the show today. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming on the show.
pleasure to be here.
So Jake, I mean, you've been CTO, you've been COO, you've been a powerful executive in the tech industry. But I kind of want to get us started, maybe with some background. Can you walk us through your career for us?
Yeah, sure, Rick. I've had the opportunities. I spent my entire career in medical devices. When I started as an intern, I was in college and I was looking for the highest paying internship job I could find. I knew nothing about med device. I knew even very little about technology. I was studying to be an engineer, and I needed some money to help pay for college and room and board and all those things. So I literally found the highest paying job by the hour that I could. And it was washing glassware. Beakers and cylinders in a chemistry lab at a company that was in medical devices and actually happened to be in diabetes as well. And they were focused on making insulin pumps and glucose sensors. And so I just, knew nothing about it, but I started washing dishes there and talking to lots of engineers and scientists. And I knew that I wanted to be an engineer. That's what I was studying in school, an electrical engineer. But I didn't know how I wanted to apply it. I just liked, understanding how things worked. And really from that internship has grown out an entire career in medical devices and specifically in devices that are designed to help people manage diabetes. And so it, I finished college and was offered an engineering job at that company. While I was there, the company was called MiniMed. While I was there, it got acquired by the largest medical device company in the world. It was called Medtronic. So Medtronic acquires us. And so at that time, I was about 3 or 4 years into my engineering career. And it was a really interesting experience because we were a smaller company acquired by a very large med device company. And so you learn a lot of things change. I really actually valued some of the things that the bigger organization, more experience brought to our company. But then around 2004, I got this amazing opportunity to come join a startup in San Diego called Dexcom, which is currently the company I work for. And the way that came about was a previous colleague of mine that I'd worked with at MiniMed had basically moved down to Dexcom and was looking for someone to help on the electrical engineering side. And so he knew me because we'd worked together and he called me. He said, "You got to come check this thing out." And I was not super excited at first because I had this awesome, pretty good job at Medtronic. I'd been told that I, had potential and could, they wanted to put me through lots of different experiences around the company and have to travel to quite a few different divisions of the company and work there. And so they were kind of setting me up for a leadership track. And so I thought this is great. It's the largest med device company in the world. But after I came down to San Diego and interviewed with the people at Dexcom and saw the technology and what we were trying to do, which was make a glucose sensor that could last for up to a year, measuring glucose to help someone manage their diabetes. It'd never been done before, and it was a really exciting technical challenge. I had some context having worked at MiniMed about what diabetes means and what being, making products that, save people's lives, what it means. But really, for me, the most exciting part was trying to solve this really challenging problem, which is put a glucose sensor in someone's body have it measure reliably for a year. That was really what we were set out to do. So I finally made the jump over to this little startup. There were about 35 people in the company, almost all technology-based folks. We had scientists working on the sensor parts. I was hired actually to work on the antenna design. So it was the idea was if you have the sensor, you have to figure out how to get the glucose readings to something helpful for someone to see. And so, get the readings onto a device. This is long before the days of smartphones. And so we had this little display device, and I was in charge of trying to design the antennas to make that work. Long before Bluetooth existed, this is, early 2000s. And so it was all around finding a radio that would work and broadcast. And, the trajectory here at Dexcom, I've been here almost 20 years. And it's been, a fantastic experience of both developing exciting new technology, as well as taking on new opportunities and roles and tons of experiences that have kind of shaped the career. I mean, it's a little unique, right? I've been in one company for so long, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because the learning experience at a company, that's experiencing high levels of growth for basically 2 decades it's been an unbelievable experience, and something that I look back on what we've done, and I look forward to where we're going, and I've never been more excited.
So Jake, it's interesting. Rick and I interview people all the time who are software engineers and developers. So being an engineer in your space, like, what does that do? Because clearly you're not writing code, you're doing other things. So what kind of work did you do when you, and it's wild, you say, so you're building these things that are going inside the body?
Yeah. It's so the interesting thing is, if you think about this medical technology we have, it's a glucose sensor. And so when you think about the engineering aspects of it, there's polymer chemistry, materials, electrochemistry. There's a whole bunch of the technology around just sensing the glucose.
Mhm.
But then to make it highly desirable, consumer-friendly, usable product, there's a whole bunch of other technology that we put around it, which is embedded microcontrollers, and that basically measure the sensor signal, and then use Bluetooth. Today we use Bluetooth low energy radios.
Wait, you make it sound so common, but wait. So like, this is something that you're building, and then you're putting, it's like inside your body, or is it just like something that you plug, like a when you get saline
Patch.
thing in
Yeah, so it's basically it's both of those things. It's a little patch. It's this little device, this guy, and part of that patch is a little tiny sensor probe that actually goes under your skin.
Wow.
under your skin.
Yeah, so it's a little tiny. It's like,
And you live with that, like under your skin, and it's just there. That's like the regular.
it's there, and you wear it for 10 days. It's basically a device that's disposable. So you wear it for 10 days and you peel it off, and then you put a new one on. And so it's worn continuously.
So it's just like,
Yeah, it's just you put it on the back of your arm, and
Yeah.
you basically wear it under your
Yeah.
clothes, and it's sitting there measuring glucose continuously, and then sending all that information to a multitude of different display devices, depending on, as a user, what you want. The most popular form is a smartphone. So we have an app on a smartphone. So you're basically wearing this patch. It's sending data continuously to your smartphone, and then at any time you can take a look at your glucose, or your phone will actually alert you if your glucose is going out of range. You kind of customize where you want to try and keep your blood glucose. And so it does that. And there's a lot of other kind of aspects of the product and how it helps people manage their diabetes. But the fundamental technology is, sensor chemistry, hardware to measure that, mobile app software. When we have a large backend cloud infrastructure that does things like allow remote monitoring, so parents can follow their kids while they're at school. So when parents are away from their kids, diabetes is one of those conditions you have to always pay attention to, and you're always managing it. And so parents can kind of see how their kids are doing when they're apart. And the back end also gives us a lot of ability to process the data and serve up insights to both users and their physicians on things that they can do to basically we identify patterns and give them recommendations and things they can do to better manage diabetes.
So is it like, let's say you have a younger person who, the parents will say, no, you can't eat candy, you can't have that. But of course they eat a big, slice of cake. And then does it like just go off and boom, like, alerting the parents on their smartphone, hey, your knuckleheaded kid just ate like a half a, chocolate cake and it's now going through the roof. And then what do you do? Like, can you get it, wash it out of your system, or like, how does this work?
Yeah, so the way that we like to think about what our products allow users to do is it allows them to actually do things like that. It allows them to live
Yeah.
a normal life, allows kids to experience childhood in the way that everybody gets to, and you don't want diabetes to be something that holds you back. So what with, for example, type 1 diabetes children, generally you take insulin multiple times per day. That is basically a drug that allows your body to absorb the glucose out of your blood and bring it into the tissues. And so basically it's a process where if you have type 1, your body doesn't naturally produce that insulin. So that's why you have to inject it. And so that's what you do. And generally before you eat carbohydrates like sugar, cake, any of that kind of stuff, you take an insulin shot. So basically before every meal, or there's other modalities like insulin delivery through pumps. So an automated insulin delivery system, those exist too. And it's basically another piece of hardware that you have that is infusing the insulin directly. And so you don't have to actually take a separate shot. So all of that is basically all around. The whole point of diabetes is trying to manage glucose, blood glucose in a normal range. And so the most important part of that is understanding what is glucose, what's the value, and how is it changing, and then you can determine how much insulin to take or whatever therapy you're using.
And this goes on, if once you have it, it's like, that's it, you're going to always have it, and this is going to go on for most of your life?
Yeah, with type 1, which is an autoimmune disease, there is no cure for it today. There's lots of research that's been going on for decades around understanding the disease and how either to prevent it or reverse it. But today there is no cure for type 1. And so once you're diagnosed, you have it for the rest of your life. It's your body's not able to produce insulin. So things like glucose sensors, continuous glucose sensors, are extremely helpful in being able to manage it and live a normal life. With type 2 diabetes, which is the type of diabetes that impacts a much larger population, it's the same type of a problem. You're trying to manage glucose, but it comes from a different physiologic angle where your body doesn't use the insulin you produce as efficiently as it did earlier on in your life. And so you basically start becoming insulin resistant, and your glucose, you start having a hard time managing your glucose. And so CGM is also, continuous glucose monitoring is really helpful for that too, because it gives you insights into every meal you eat, every, when you exercise, when you even just go for a walk, it shows you how all those things impact your glucose. And it basically is a fantastic tool for teaching people, how to make choices that impact their glucose.
I mean, Jake, I'm so impressed in the terms of the details that you're able to just kind of walk us through your industry, but also kind of this disease. How did you learn this knowledge? Like, I know you minored in biomedical engineering in college, but I mean, surely you didn't pick up this like medical experience then. So do you have any advice for folks that might be interested in getting into med tech or health tech? Do they have to have this kind of knowledge already, or is this kind of the grit and the curiosity enough to kind of quote unquote learn it on the job?
Grit and curiosity is the number one thing I look for in interviewing people.
Was it really?
And actually, I do find that often when you're in innovative technology spaces within med tech, you actually want people who don't have med tech backgrounds. Like particularly in our software teams, in our hardware engineering teams, I love hiring people from outside the industry because they bring the knowledge from how that industry does things. For example, consumer devices, right? Med tech, it typically is not always a super high volume type of technology, right? You develop a product for a particular disease state. With diabetes, it's such a large, it impacts so many people, and the opportunity for our devices to help is so great the volumes that we look at developing from a hardware side, are fairly large compared to most med tech companies. And so I love bringing in people who have high volume consumer electronics experience, people who have software experience designing mobile applications for consumers completely unrelated to health. Because what I found is you bring that together with people who do have the med device, med tech backgrounds. We have physicians on staff here. We've got lots of people with clinical experience. You bring all that together as a cross-functional team, and that's kind of how you get the best ideas and the best product. And the most innovation comes from putting people, diverse backgrounds together, right? And so that's what we strive for. To your question around my knowledge base on it, having been in the space for so many years and watched it develop, and also myself trying to remain as curious as possible. It's one of the things that's funny, like people sometimes think when you become a high level executive that you don't get down in the details, but a day doesn't go by where I see something about our business, whether it's something internal or something about the external field that I want to really dig deep on, and I'll go and I'll research it and I'll go find as much information. I'll ask people, because that's how you never stop learning. The second you stop learning is the second that you're not all that helpful to the company. So it's always about continuing to grow as an individual in your knowledge base. And the more you do it, the more natural it comes to be able to speak about the industry and the area you're working on.
Yeah, I think that's such a helpful lesson, because I certainly earlier in my career, I thought that my managers or my executives, they got into those positions of power or those roles because they knew it all, right? Because they had the experience either before joining the company, doing the same thing at somewhere else, or because they learned it in, many years of university or studies. And that's how they're finally going to industry to apply that knowledge. But it seems like even now today, as an executive, you're still learning about your business, about the company, about the industry, certainly about the changing world of the disease and health generally.
Absolutely. I mean, you need to follow those things, whether you're setting, corporate strategy or, you're working with your team to make, improve efficiencies around the way you manufacture or develop products. You got to be curious. You got to be asking questions. You always got to be learning. I've been the CTO at Dexcom and leading the research and development team for many years, more than 10 years. And then I was recently last year promoted to the chief operating officer. And while I'm still the R&D function is within my team, I now had a number of other areas to look after and become more familiar with. And I'm still learning stuff every day about aspects of our business that, even though I've been here for 20 years, I wasn't super involved in. I was adjacent to it. I was aware of what was going on, but I wasn't in the details of it and better understanding it. And it's been a fantastic experience of learning more about the different aspects of our business, and then continuing to drive us forward.
Have you found one executive role more challenging to transition to than another? Was it easier to be the CTO because you had that engineering background? Did you find that then that transition to being the COO and perhaps managing business units and other executives challenging as a result? Or is it kind of chief product officer where it's just all things product and just so many things that you might be seeing new for the first time all the time?
It's a great question, Rick. It's kind of like every transition I've made in my career, it's always been, the challenges are a little different. Each time you take on a new role, what you're trying to focus on and drive forward, it changes. And I like that because, it gives you opportunity to try new things and learn new things. It does, though. One of the things for me that I had to continually push myself is pushing myself into an area where I wasn't particularly comfortable. It's really easy to stay within your area of expertise. For my example would be within engineering. There was a time period, after I'd been at the company for about 3 or 4 years here at Dexcom, and I was offered the opportunity to lead a cross-functional team for the first time. I'd been leading an engineering team very focused on kind of hardware engineering. And it was really like, hey, we've got this really important project for the company, and we need a leader for it. We think you do a good job. And I actually turned it down. I said, no, I want to stay. I'm trying to figure out this new thing called Bluetooth, and I think it's going to help our products, and I want to stay focused on it. And I'm excited. It was my kind of area of radio engineering. And it took like a second attempt from the leadership team to come to me and say, hey, look, we really need someone to lead this project, and we think you're the right one. And I said, okay, I'll try it, right? And it was really like fairly uncomfortable to step into a role where I was starting to basically set direction and lead a team of people that were not engineers. There were clinical folks, quality team members. We had some algorithm design engineers. There were mechanical engineers. This whole team that was trying to develop a product that was unique, different from our current technology. And it was right around the time, it was like I had to get my first BlackBerry, right? It was right around that time frame when everyone was starting to email on their phones. And so it was all around, how do I manage this cross-functional team? And the way that I attacked it was spending lots of time with all the team members to better understand what they were working on, what problems they were trying to solve, and how as a team we could come together to work better and solve those issues together. I had this thing I used to say, we were in cubicles, right, in a small building, but to go talk to everybody, I was walking around constantly, and I felt like I was wearing my shoes out because I was just going around talking to everybody all the time. And I found it was a really helpful way to both kind of lead the team, help them understand that I understood what they're working on and what we were trying to solve, and understand from their perspective what the challenge was. And it was a really great way to kind of get into my first experience of cross-functional leadership.
Now, I do have to ask, right? Very few professionals stay at a company longer than, let's say, 2, 3, or even 4 years, especially in the tech industry. You stayed at Dexcom for almost 20 years. Like, what has kept you there? What are the opportunities at Dexcom for professional growth, upskilling, putting you in those kind of uncomfortable positions so that you can learn those leadership roles?
I think with Dexcom being a high growth company for so long, and it's all organic growth, that type of environment, and then you combine that with a very mission-driven culture, right? We develop a product that changes people's lives and helps them, live longer and be more healthy. You combine all that, there's tons of opportunities because of the growth. There's tons of motivation and passion because of the culture. Originally I was very focused on, hey, we're trying to solve this really cool technical problem. We're trying to build a glucose sensor that can work reliably under the skin, in somebody's body, measuring their glucose. We actually, the big goal there was, let's try and develop a product that can replace the standard of care at the time, which was finger sticks. Once we did that, it was like, hey, maybe I'm done. Maybe we've done something amazing. We've developed this great technology. Maybe there is an opportunity for me to go learn something new and try something else. But then, as the technology continued to evolve, I got to the point where I started realizing the impact that this technology can have around the world is so huge. There's over 500 million people that have diabetes in the world. It's like I can't think of anything else I'd want to do. So, right now it's all about how do we make this technology, applicable and accessible to as many people around the world as we can that can benefit from it. And so that is kind of the excitement that has kept me at the company. I do value people, when I'm looking, to hire folks. I frequently, one of the things I say is I love to see people that have stayed at a company long enough to experience the outcomes of their decisions. So when you're developing products, right, and you're doing it, there's a product development lifecycle, for example, you need to be there long enough so that the decisions you made, either as a product manager, as a leader, as an engineer, they actually play all the way through. And I think that's where you learn the most, is when you actually see it all the way through. And so this concept of, staying within companies for only a few years, it's challenging. I mean, I get the aspect of you get lots of different experience across different technologies and industries and things and products. That's helpful. I mean, not to discount that, but particularly as you move into leadership roles, I like to see people who've stayed somewhere long enough so they know how the decisions they've made played out.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because I think early on in your career, it's very easy to optimize kind of for the wrong thing, right? You might be chasing the title, you might be just chasing higher pay. And so it's very tempting when a recruiter comes along 1 year in, 2 year in, and waves that kind of treat in front of your face, right? Where I've started to learn now exactly what you said, right? Where, gosh, there's a lot more opportunity in terms of just like sticking it out and learning, right? And like really getting into kind of the nuance rather than kind of like the superficial, oh, I kind of know the industry because I might have, been adjacent to a product manager or been adjacent to this person, but like really going in depth and kind of understanding the challenges or like speaking to the actual customers that have to kind of use your product or suffer through not having that solution day in and day out. It can be really like inspiring and really helpful in terms of like leveling up your career, probably even faster, right? Where you could probably just make up for those titles or pay very quickly later on.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is just within, sometimes you run into challenging situations within a workplace or a job position. And, a lot of times it has to do with team members and maybe your boss, or I find that working with people and working through those things can be some of the most rewarding, but also just gaining that experience of how to work with people and how to find an outcome that is beneficial for everybody. That component early on in my career, I had multiple times where I was kind of like had others in my team or that I was leading that were really challenging to work with. And so just figuring out how to work with them, doing, love doing things like disc reports and then sharing results as teams, talking it through. Because, being a leader, there's a big part of that that's just empathy, understanding why someone has the perspective that they have or where they're coming from. I find if you try to understand that, you're going to have a much better chance of resolving any type of issue, whether it's a technical challenge or a personnel challenge, if you understand where people are coming from.
Rick, Jake, I'm curious. It seems to me the tech space is very different than like medical devices in other areas, where in some it's just standard procedure acceptable to stay a year, 2 years, and then move on. Others, not so much, where you stay there for long term. And it's just a different mindset. It's a different culture, right?
It is, yeah. And part of that might be when you think of like product life cycles, right? One of the things within med tech is our product life cycles in certain aspects of the technologies take longer because you need to have the product developed, and then you have to do like something like a clinical trial where you test it on people. Those take 6 months, 12 months, sometimes 18 months. And then you submit that to a regulatory agency, whether it's in the United States we have the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, or outside the United States there's other regulatory bodies that review it and then approve it for use by the population within that geography. So that type of life cycle is takes a little bit longer to get through. Interesting though enough is that one of the things that we focus a lot of our time and effort on is how do we bring more speed into and innovation into med tech, and a lot of that happens in software. And so being a software engineer on our team here at Dexcom is very similar, if not exactly the same, as being a software engineer at any tech company. The one difference, though, is that as we develop our software, documentation is important, and it's something that actually has to be kind of recorded and can be reviewed at any time by one of those regulatory agencies. And so there's a little bit extra making sure that that stuff is getting done. You can't just make a change and launch it out to people, particularly if it can impact the safety of our products. So there's a couple extra checks and balances there, but when it comes to mobile app development, we're doing deployments quite rapidly. We didn't start that way. We started, it was very slow, but we've kind of worked to continue to bring in, best thinking and best practices for development. And so, early in a career, I think it makes perfect sense to get lots of different experience and move around. I think when it comes to leadership, though, I do tend to think it's good to stick around for a while. You got to find the right role, right? Sometimes roles aren't right, and that's an important part of anybody's career development, is finding the right role for yourself and something you're passionate about. But I do like to see leadership that stays in place for a while.
So Jake, for yourself, where do you see for yourself and for the company that next step? Is there another iteration, some new technology that you're going to bring to the table?
There's lots of opportunity. Our focus today is on people. Our main customer base today are people that have diabetes, that treat their diabetes with insulin, whether it's type 1 or type 2. So that's a segment of the population that has access to our product. When I say that, what it means is their health insurance pays for the product, right? That's how they can get access to it, whether it's private insurance or Medicare or anything, or think outside the United States, government payers, they cover the product because they see how important it is for that population. The next kind of frontier is the group of people with diabetes that aren't using insulin, that are either taking oral medications or just using diet and exercise to try and manage their glucose. A CGM is an incredibly important tool for them to learn, and it's kind of like it opens a window into their metabolic health. That's the next big frontier. It's a much bigger population. It's a group that it likely isn't always reimbursed by insurance, so people may be paying for some of this out of pocket. And so thinking about the products in that way takes us even closer to kind of consumer device level product categories. And so that's where we're focused. There's 1 in 3 adults in the US has pre-diabetes, which means their glucose levels are higher than normal, but they're not quite at the level where you'd be considered diagnosed with diabetes. But you're kind of on that trajectory. Your metabolic health isn't great, and you're starting to move towards diabetes. That's reversible based on big food, diet, exercise choices, all of that kind of lifestyle choice. It can be reversed, or it can be significantly improved if you just understand how different choices impact glucose. And so all of us, I wear sensors all the time, and I'm always learning more and more about how different food, different levels of stress, how much I sleep, all those things impact my glucose variability. And so, better understanding all of those different data points, combining CGM data with activity data, combined with sleep data, combined with blood pressure, heart rate, you start putting all that stuff together. And I think there's tremendous amount we are still out there to learn and be able to serve up the insights to people so that they can live healthy.
You have a product or planning on one, because it's really interesting. And this might sound a little crass, but here in America, it does seem we have an obese population. And is obesity correlated with having high glucose? And if so, do you have some sort of technology that can kind of spot it before it happens? So rather than waiting for somebody to have it and then they're in trouble, and they have to figure it out, but to measure, okay, you're on track. If you keep eating what you're eating and doing what you're doing, yeah, this is not going to end well. And so you could kind of, like you were talking at the beginning of the conversation about monitoring it, but this is being proactive and saying, wait, no, don't eat this, don't eat that, or you should eat this instead, or you should do this kind of exercise. Do you have a product like that, or does that make sense to have a product like that?
Basically a continuous glucose monitor can give you that insight, that exact thing that you're saying, which is, how does this particular food impact my glucose reading? And usually what it is, it's a glucose excursion, right? It's how high does your glucose go and how long does it stay high before your body's able to regulate it back down to normal. And so the CGM, today in the United States, it's a prescription device, physician prescribes it. There are, if a physician prescribes it, you can go on Amazon and get it. And so through the Amazon pharmacy function, And so there are people who do use it in that way. And there's a lot of clinical studies actually being run today. Several different companies are focused on this, which is using continuous glucose monitors to help people lose weight. Because it basically helps them understand, we're all told, here's what a healthy diet looks like. You got to individualize that. And you also have to see the immediate feedback for, okay, if I do decide to, eat something like a milkshake, what's it going to do to my glucose? I understand. And most of the time, it's not like you're telling people don't eat the milkshake. Maybe it's just moderate it. Drink half and split the other one with your friend or something, right? I mean, it's just all the learning that comes from it, and it's a reminder, and it's an education tool. And we see it. I mean, you put a CGM on somebody who has diabetes, and their outcome improves just as they wear the product, even without a physician intervention. Physician telling them, because they get the data and they start learning about, okay, how do I control my glucose better?
Does it also monitor your exercise, your steps? Are there things that could help?
Yes, the product. So our product today doesn't monitor those things, but if you look into the future, that's an obvious place for us to go, which is start bringing all that information together to provide even better insights for people, and just giving them recommendations that are approachable and something that somebody can actually do reliably could make a really significant difference in their overall health outcome over time. And so, building in that sleep data, activity data, all those other things, I think it's a lot of opportunity out there. Then there's the whole other aspect of how do you start combining in AI and large language models. Like, how do you combine that and produce even more, kind of tailored, personalized insights for people around their health, metabolic health and general outcome. So,
Well, that sounds like a good product, because you mentioned sleep a couple of times. I never even thought that would be something that could contribute.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's multiple products out there now that are tracking sleep and giving sleep scores and readiness scores for the next morning, and tracks heart rate variability throughout the day. And you start combining all those things, they're all health parameters, right? And glucose is a rather new one, because up until it's only been like about the past 5 to 10 years that's continuous glucose monitors are accurate enough to use them in these kind of outside of diabetes concepts. And so I think it's a lot of opportunity for learning and then product opportunities.
Now, like, speaking of opportunity, do you have any advice to give to product managers or engineers who are just looking to own more, you know, show more, demonstrate more impact at work, or become these product management technologists, like executives in the future?
Yeah, I do. So, one of the things I think can really help someone, in a product management role or software, a design engineering role is really getting into all aspects of the product, right? I find that sometimes people, like I kind of mentioned before, like you like to stay in your comfort zone of the place that you absolutely understand,
Right.
right? I love product managers that understand every aspect of their product. And even if they're only technically responsible for a certain area of the product, just knowing as much as you can, that whole concept of staying curious and asking questions and learning, you're so much more impactful to a business when you have a more well-rounded perspective on things. And so whether it's a mobile application or cloud software or product management, really understanding how the product works and why it works and how it interacts with, how the customers interact with it, the users, really helps. One of the things that I promote is for people who come to Dexcom to participate in one of our clinical studies, where you're able to wear the product and experience how it works and spend a day in the life of one of our customers. And so, it's not with something like a medical technology, it's not as simple as just downloading the app and using it, right? So we have these clinical trials that we run to evaluate products, and it's a great way for people to learn. And so I always encourage folks, if they haven't done it already, is to try one out. understand how it works. And so that would be my advice: is remain curious, look at the, all of the aspects of the product, and step into places where you're not so comfortable, but you've got colleagues that can help you learn.
I mean, sticking into that lane of promotions, you've certainly earned a lot throughout your career. Is there one promotion that you're the most proud of having earned?
I'm not one promotion. I think that I'm proud of them all. I think it's been, an incredible opportunity to experience the growth here and have the different roles that I've had as Dexcom's continued to grow. I love it's kind of interesting, this like when you do that transition and when it happens. For me, it's always just been very, very kind of, it's a natural point in time where it makes sense. And one of the things I would say is, when you're looking for promotions within a company, one of the most important things to do is to make sure that as you move into the next role, the role or the area of responsibility that you're moving out of, there has to be someone there that can take it on. And so basically, when you think about your promotions at companies, it's important to think about succession planning for within your own team, so that you've got the people and you've been teaching folks and they've been learning, and you've been, even when I'm hiring, I'm always looking for someone who has the potential to be a successor for my role, because that's how you build really strong teams, as you recruit the best people you can find, often that have better capabilities than yourself. And so that's really an important part of development within a particular organization.
So if I'm looking to get promoted myself, do I have to then take on the responsibility of making sure someone kind of fills in my shoes, that someone from my team or someone can kind of step in and kind of take over to then free me up to maybe take that next step myself?
Yeah, my perspective on that is, even if you aren't looking to be promoted, you should always be doing that as a leader, because the company, it's the most important thing for the company, is to make sure that you've got successors in place, whether it's through promotion or you find another fantastic opportunity that you want to go experience. You want to leave things in good hands. And so finding someone, working on a succession plan within your team and having multiple candidates that you think could take on the role. The actual major benefit from that is you're hiring the people that can take on more and have potential to continue to advance. And I think that's one of the keys to building successful management teams over time that stand the test of time.
No, is there an opportunity where someone should turn down a promotion or that next step because they still have some learning to do, or they haven't built that succession plan themselves?
I
Is
No, I think I mean, if you're offered a promotion and it's within an area that you want to move into, or like I said, you're not always comfortable, but I'd have a hard time turning down an opportunity to for more responsibility, to try something different, because you're going to grow and learn, right? And so I think it's something that it's an important decision when you're offered opportunity like that. But in rare cases, I've seen it make sense. But in most cases, I'd say jump at the opportunity and, learn as much as you can.
I love that, because I think there's so many folks out there that they're in the middle of their career. They're trying to figure out what they want to do next, right? Do they want to kind of stay heads down and become kind of a super individual contributor, be kind of the subject matter expert within their function, within their discipline? Or do they want to take on the kind of extra steps of managing teams and then projects and then business units and kind of objectives at a company level, to kind of be that leader, be that executive? And I think it's a good reminder that you kind of have to like take a look within and say, like, which role can I actually learn the most, right? It might be easy to, for me, be a PR person and just do PR all day and not really kind of stretch, just like have those like relationships and just that contacts and just be good at it day in, day out. But you're kind of like on a treadmill, right? You're not kind of taking that next step. You're not traveling somewhere. Um, Does that make sense?
That's personal growth. There's no real personal growth in the comfort zone. You got to get
right?
outside that comfort zone to grow. Um, you know, and one of the things is, as we're talking about career development, one of the things that we focus on, you know, here at Dexcom, part of the culture, and something that we've had to continually kind of take a look at as we've grown, right? As companies grow, when you're a startup, there's tons of opportunity for everyone to try and, you know, wear all these different hats, and you're trying to move along. But then as you grow and the company gets larger and you start having these very defined functions, you know, kind of globally around the world, one of the things that's really important around career development is how you have the conversation. Either, you know, basically we focus on teaching our employees and our leaders how to have the conversations around career development for, you know, for their teams. And so basically how to approach your leader about, you know, things that you're interested in developing further within yourself. And then how our leaders focus on their teams and how they, you know, make room for that type of personal development, keep an eye out for the opportunities to provide their team for development, because it can, especially when you're in like high growth product development mode, it's easy to stay very focused on the work. And you can get stuck heads down working, like you mentioned, on the treadmill. You're trying to get things done. But there is a really important aspect of continual, you know, personal development and personal growth, career development. And so just focusing on the importance of having those conversations, we require our leaders to have those conversations with their employees, and to basically to the point where even sometimes we say you got to document that you had the conversation. And so just to make sure that we're fostering that type of environment where that free flow of communication around development is happening, because with lack of that, you know, you're not going to see the type of development you want to see. Part of it's on the employee to develop their own kind of career path and work with leadership, and then it's also on leadership to help provide the opportunities. So.
Now, earlier you mentioned curiosity and grit. Those are kind of some of the traits or characteristics that you're certainly looking for, definitely in an executive. You know, how are other ways that, you know, a job candidate stands out when they meet you or go through Dexcom's job interview process?
I think being super authentic is really important. I know people, there's different approaches to you know, interviewing process and stuff, but what I've seen is when people come in with their very specific rehearsed things they're going to tell you about themselves, you know, it's good to think, you know, when you're sitting there getting ready for a job interview, it's helpful to think about how you're going to characterize the things you've learned over time and your different experiences, right? But you got to be authentic. And when you get asked questions, I'll give you an example. One of my favorite questions to ask during an interview is, tell me about the biggest failure you've ever had in your career.
Ooh.
Right. And to answer that question, you have to be pretty authentic, right? And you have to think about it, and you have to basically, you know, and I can tell a lot about a person and the way they think about things and the way that they answer that question. And so I think being authentic is really important. I also think, you know, depending on the organization, you know, for Dexcom, you know, we get so many job applications, and we have a huge team that works on talent recruitment and talent management. Making sure your resume is really tight, making sure there's no spelling, grammar errors, make sure it's very applicable for the role you're applying for. Those are all really important things when you apply to larger companies and you're trying to get through the recruiting process. Those are also kind of important things. When I see a resume that has a typo on it, I think, boy, you really didn't spend a lot of effort and time on that. Is that how you're going to approach things, right? And it may sound silly, but it's something that I've found is important. And so making sure that you get that right. But then when it comes to the interview process, be yourself and be authentic. And that goes a really long way.
Are there any other kind of tips and tricks that we should know to kind of give us the edge when we're applying to Dexcom?
I think, you know, having some references, right? People, you know, someone within the company that knows you is also quite helpful, even if it's a completely different. Like I get folks that I know within my personal network all the time that want to apply for jobs here, and I will basically, you know, make sure that the resume gets in front of the hiring manager and they have an opportunity and look. I think that's, you know, that is helpful. You know, if you know someone at the company that knows the hiring manager or can find the hiring manager, make sure that the resumes at least, kind of given a look at and you understand the candidate. So I think that's another thing, but the making sure that your background kind of matches what's being advertised is what we're looking for is also pretty important.
No, Jack, I don't know if you've heard of this, but I've certainly heard it from my heads of recruiting and chief people officer friends within the tech industry, that right now with all these layoffs and kind of the job market where it is right now, some of these roles are getting hundreds, thousands of applications in just a few hours.
Yeah.
And so some of these recruiters are telling me, oh gosh, I actually just rely only on personal contacts, whether like I've reached out to them myself or they've come from someone internal to the company, because otherwise I would just be spending all day looking at these resumes and applications that I'd rather prefer kind of the trusted few. Have you seen that or heard that?
100%. Yeah. What I find
Oh,
out,
wow.
and Jake alluded to it, is that if you could get somebody who knows somebody, best case scenario, if you know somebody who's working at the company, your target company, and you have someone give a recommendation, that's fantastic. Now, skill level 2, if you get maybe another person to recommend it and go into that HR director, and now the HR director says, wait, Jack Kelly, wait, I got someone else who gave me the resume. And now this guy must be awesome. So now you have this halo effect that is, recommended from 2 different sources, reliable sources inside. And yeah, they'll give you the shot. It's like you cut in line. So it's in this kind of environment, where you go on LinkedIn and you'll easily see 50, 100 people, because now everybody's applying for everything. So those numbers are a little weird too, because it's overinflated because people are stressed out. I can't find a job. I'm just going to apply everywhere. So if you can get somebody, that insider, to vouch for you, that's clutch. That's really super key. That's very important. I think that makes the biggest difference in the world.
Got it. Jake, do you have any kind of lasting career advice or just kind of things that we should know as professionals that are looking to level up our career?
I think, always be open to taking on new opportunities and trying, offering to step into areas that maybe there's some work there that no one's really excited about tackling. I've done that many times throughout my career. It's been like, there's an issue, someone needs to jump on it and try and figure it out. And it's not always where everybody wants to go. Showing that you're open to trying new things and to tackling stuff that's important, that may not be fun or glamorous, but isn't important to the company. Give those things a shot. Give it a try. What's the worst thing can happen is that you're not successful, but you learn something there on that project. And so there's so many times in my career where things didn't go as planned. They almost never go as planned, but they actually went horribly wrong. How many product development projects do we all know where things didn't go the way you wanted? Took longer, couldn't figure out this aspect. And so, but you learn so much from those experiences that they're really worth, jumping into. And that's ultimately how, you're going to learn, to be career development, more success, more growth, is really learning how to tackle different things.
No, I love that advice. To just be willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and do the things that no one else is doing or no one wants to do. You can certainly stand out that way and definitely learn a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks for that lesson, Jake, and thanks for
Excellent.
coming on the show.
Thanks, Jake.
That was a pleasure. That was great. Great to meet you guys and time.